It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to be discussing Saturday's late 1-0 win over Brighton and Hove Albion at the Amex. Yes, we were penned back for most of the game. Brighton probably should have won, but they didn't. Manor Solomon in the 88th minute. I have never known an away end quite like yesterday. What a day on the South Coast. 3 words on everyone's lips: smash and grab. I am joined today by Jack Kelly. Hello.
Hello all.
Dan Cook. Hello.
Hi, Sammy.
And making his debut on the podcast, Bryce Koval. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
It may be your debut on the podcast for Bryce, but it's definitely not his first involvement in Fulhamish. Bryce has been a secret weapon that we've had doing tons of our social media for a couple of years now. First from the States, but now you've moved to Madrid, which makes it a little bit easier for you to come on the podcast. So yeah, Bryce, it's great to actually have you on the podcast, despite you kind of being in and around the fold for quite a while.
Yeah, I know it feels good. I've been behind the scenes, but I've always dreamed of being on the pod, so dream debut after a match like that. Can't ask for more.
No, you could not at all. And as you mentioned just before we started recording, you thought it might be a sad recording, a sad debut for large parts of the game, and you'd have been totally right. But in the end, it all just worked out fantastically. Dan, please may you do some 3-word reviews for us.
Yeah, I mean, we had loads, obviously, and a lot of them centered around our man of the moment. And that is one of them from Louis JW, which I did love. Manor the moment is a really good one. FFC Dom with We're Doing It, which I think is absolutely valid. And we'll discuss later whether We're Doing It means Europa Conference League or Champions League. We've got 2 from our pod favourite, Richard Solbamba, for which first one, Yo-Yo to Euro, which I think is really nice.
That's brilliant.
It's a really, really good one from Sol. I mean, these are the levels we expect from the man, though.
Yeah.
He's very good at this. We had also had Drew Heatley with, our own with Amex Air Miles. There's a lot of European focus things here. And then finally, Neil Laws, who put in what is technically a 2-word review, but we'll update it to 3. R Brighton rocks. I've added in R there, and a photo of Tim Ream and Issa Diop, who were absolutely immense at the back today.
All right. Well, let's get going with the match reaction. I have so many questions, by the way. Like, I've never seen the amount of questions that we've had coming in. So I'm going to dedicate a big part of the show to questions later on. But Dan, you were next to me yesterday at the Amex, and we watched with awe the entire game. Brighton and Hove Albion were amazing for most of the match. But just as the game went on and the longer it stayed 0-0, we started saying to each other, could you imagine if we actually somehow won this? Maybe we could. And I think we were it was in hope rather than expectation that we were saying that. And yeah, the feeling when Manor Solomon scored, I tweeted it at the time. I said I floated and went to heaven for about a minute. My soul left my body. It was just sensational.
I mean, I can confirm you were getting bear hugged quite strongly by me. I think that potentially that might have been why you felt like you ascended to heaven, but it was unbelievable. I think I turned to you at one point and said that if we nick this, it would be like an all-time away day, like really up there for just a full experience. It was a good day. We went to the pub. We were in Lewis beforehand, having a couple of pints, got the train in, and yeah, Brighton were brilliant. I mean, we were saying it. There was just some passages of play where we looked at each other and were like, that's just very, very good football. And there was very little we could do about it. But I think in general, defensively, I thought we were really good. I was a little bit surprised at how high Brighton's XG was, because it didn't feel like they had that many clear-cut chances. They had a lot of shots, but it felt like we handled situations really well. Issa Diop and Tim Ream were brilliant, and yeah, to nick it like that, it's I can't think of many games in recent memory where we've nicked a game like that and really felt like we've done a job on an opposition. It's just brilliant.
The one that someone mentioned to me afterwards, and I'm really sorry, I can't remember who it was, but I was speaking to someone after the game, and they said shades of Middlesbrough under Jokanovic when Norwood scored in the 90th minute. But That was obviously a bit of a smash and grab, but it wasn't the same level of performance where Fulham did nothing for the entire game, then won it. It was a bit of a 50-50 match. Borough shaded it definitely that afternoon, but then Fulham won it at the death, and it was amazing. But I've never known a game quite like that, where just the other team were just so much better than us throughout the 90. But saying that, I'm not 100% going to go sit here and be like, Brighton absolutely deserved to win. There wasn't a chance that Brighton had that I thought, oh my God, how haven't they scored that? It was still a very resolute, good Fulham performance. Fulham kind of deserved the win. Obviously, yes, Brighton had more of the game. I'm not making much sense here, but I didn't come out of it. It wasn't like Brighton had 20 gilt-edged chance. Leno pulled off a million wonder saves. They had a lot of territory. They had a lot of the ball. They worked it fantastically. But Fulham kind of made their own luck yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they had a lot of half chances, to say the least. I think the passage of play, like Dan was saying, they were phenomenal. And actually, they were carving us open quite at ease. And if it wasn't for last-ditch challenges from Ream and Diop, we would have been in trouble. Leno helped us out on a few occasions as well. But we dug in, and it was quite extraordinary. The game, ironically, obviously, I wasn't drinking or anything. So sometimes when you drink, you completely forget what the game was like. But because of the manner of the manner, literally, of the winner, the whole game was a blur. I didn't remember what happened. I was like, I can't remember a single chance they had. I think the best chance that Brighton had was probably the Lewis Dunk header in the second half, because it was a free header and it was wide. That was probably the closest they came. But I don't know how we won, honestly, especially with...
What was it like? Obviously, you were working yesterday, so you were in the press box in the Brighton end. What did it look like when Manor Solomon scored in the away end? Because it felt magic. It must have, and obviously there's been a lot of videos going around today. Does half of Brighton just film the game, by the way? How many different angles are there of the away end? It's really weird. Like, just get off your phone, lads. Stop filming the entire match. But anyway, just you must have had an incredible vantage point for that goal.
Well, it was funny because I was sitting next to someone. I was getting quite chatty with him, and he was on work experience at Brighton. He wasn't a Brighton fan, but he had a soft spot for them. He wanted Brighton to win. Obviously, I'm a Fulham fan. I wanted Fulham to win. When the winning goal went in, I did everything you could do when you score a goal, but I made no noise doing it. I wanted to stay very professional, otherwise, I'd be in trouble. But it was surreal. I just sort of lost my head, but without making any sound. It was incredible. The away end was amazing, and I was like, oh God, I need to get this on camera because it was so good. It was like, Garnaccio's winner at United against United for United against Fulham. Their away end limbs, it was like that from Fulham, like serious bodies everywhere. I can confirm there were bodies all over the shop, absolutely all over the shop. Bryce, obviously you were watching on the telly. What was it like for you when you saw Manor Solomon's winner? Could you believe it?
Yeah, I was gonna say to Jack, like, maybe you weren't drinking, but the adrenaline was certainly flowing. Sometimes that can make you forget, and that was how I felt. I mean, to go to a place like Brighton and do the double over them is unreal. I think like a lot of clubs would be more than happy to kind of model themselves after Brighton because they've been so good. They've been so successful in the transfer market. They've dominated most of the games they've played in this season, which yesterday they did as well. But, quintessential smash and grab. And I just lost it in my living room, jumping up and down, hugging the people I was watching with. I think I watched a combined maybe 2 or 3 hours of the limbs in the away end and videos of the goal. And so, as someone that watches most games on the television, having those videos from the ground and content like this is so crucial, and it's just so much fun.
And you're heading to England. Is it next week? The week after? That must be getting you extra excited.
Yeah, so I'm coming for 2 weekends in a row. I'm living in Madrid, but coming for 2 weekends in a row to hopefully get a ticket to the Brentford game, and then I'm going to the Arsenal game at the Cottage. So really excited. The last match I was at was West Brom away last March. which if you remember, we lost 1-0. It was pretty sad experience. So hoping for a little bit better luck this time, but yeah, really excited.
Dan, let's come on a little bit to the first half and Fulham's lineup. There was a rumour swirling around the pub. People seem to think it came from me. I saw someone on Twitter. But the rumour was that Mitro wasn't going to be playing and that Bobby Reid was up top. And the rumour was absolutely spot on. We did kind of hear in the week from Peter that Mitrovic did pick up a knock against Forest and that there was every chance that he might be struggling. But there was also the same kind of news about Willian because he apparently picked up a knock against Forest and was struggling a little bit as well. So it was just that one change where Wilson effectively came in. It felt like more than one change. It was really weird seeing the lineup because obviously it was such a fundamental change. And BDR in the false nine. I mean, a difficult game to experiment in. I wouldn't exactly say the experiment was a roaring success, BDR at false nine.
Yeah, no, and I think Marco actually himself admitted that it sort of didn't work as an idea. And I guess to an extent we can understand it because we were discussing it before the game, and whilst you lose the physical presence of a Vinicius instead of when Mitro's not available, Bobby's sort of on-ball ability maybe allows him to hold it up a bit better if he's receiving it into feet and stuff. But I just thought Brighton's press was so good that it forced us into going long so often that it just meant that Bobby wasn't in the game at all. I mean, up against Webster and Lewis Dunk, he's got no hope of winning a header. There's nothing he can do about that. And I don't think it's his fault that his performance was poor. It's just that we couldn't really play to his strengths in those moments because Brighton's press was so good. And so I understood what Silva was doing, but ultimately, do we win if we don't do that? I don't know. You can say, maybe he should have brought on Vinicius sooner, maybe he should have brought on Solomon sooner, but I guess he's brought them on at the perfect time in that game because it's, tired legs, so the game got a bit stretched. Vinicius used his strength that we were probably crying out for in the first half, and we get the winner. So masterclass / probably should have done that from the beginning, but it's worked in the end.
Yeah, I mean, we looked a little bit toothless up front, Jack, but at the back, Fulham are so impressive. We haven't conceded 2 goals in the league since that United game that you referenced. So we haven't conceded 2 in the league since the World Cup. The only time we've conceded twice was in the Cup against Sunderland, which I'm not really going to count. You might notice, by the way, speaking of not counting the Cup, I didn't play the horn today. Some people asked. It is technically 3 wins in a row, but let's wait for 3 league wins in a row. We know that Sunderland game, I'm not going to count that for the horn. But Jack, the defence, the unit, that bank of 4 in Bernd Leno. And yes, Brighton had lots of half chances yesterday, but it was all the last-ditch tackling from Ream, from Diop. I thought Robinson wasn't great going forward yesterday, but I thought going back, he nearly always kind of had Solly March's number. Kenny Tete kept Matoma very, very quiet. And this unit that Silva has built up at the back, I think we've got the 3rd most clean sheets in the league with 8. It's incredible how actually at the beginning of the season, our defence was our biggest worry. I remember those run of games where we kept conceding twice, even though we were winning games 3-2 and stuff. Right now, it is the bedrock on which this team is built on. At the beginning of the season, it was how many goals we were scoring. Right now, the reason that we're getting points is because of just that phenomenal back 5 who just works so well together.
Yeah, it starts from the base. It starts from Leno and his terrific goalkeeping capabilities. He's won us so many points this season. It's unheard of. You look at those 4 on paper, Tete, Ream, Diop, Robinson, they don't scream to you top 6 Premier League back 4. Robinson was questionable last season in the Championship. Ream has always had a cloud over his potential of performing in the Premier League. And obviously he's surpassed any expectation again. Diop came from West Ham, and West Ham fans were saying, thank God we got him off the books. We've got Thilo Kehrer who's going to sort all our issues out. Well, we'll revisit that in May. And then Kenny Tete, who of course has always been very, very good for Fulham. I've never really seen him have a bad game apart from Benfica in pre-season, where we all had a bad game. Phenomenal last-ditch challenges. I think Ream, there was an instance in the first half where he slipped and still managed to get the ball away. That was really scary. Mitoma was good. Mitoma was really good, but Tete just got the better of him in the second half. There was a couple of times where there was a time where he got dragged down and looked like it could have been a penalty, but hardly anything in it. It's amazing. 4 clean sheets away from home in the league in a row. I can't remember the last time that's ever happened. Has that ever happened for Fulham? Obviously, we
certainly not the top flight.
No, we conceded 2 at City. One was a penalty. One was an Alvarez great goal. Palace, obviously, we kept them out. We kept out Leicester, kept out Brighton. And obviously, the goal last goal we conceded was Isak against Newcastle. Last minute of the game. And Tosin was on the pitch on that occasion as well. So insane. I don't know what more to say. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, Bryce. I mean, that is the bedrock of this team right now. The midfield had a difficult game, just the pure quality that they were up against. I mean, Polinia and Reed and Pereira, they worked hard, they hassled, they got in the way where they needed to, but just a sensational midfield that we came up against. Caicedo and McAllister just looked so solid in there. Obviously, Pascal Gross is a fantastic player as well. The fact that he's probably the weakest of the 3, I think, says an awful lot about that kind of midfield trio. So it was a tough day at the office. And Brighton, they are one of the best sides in this league. But it maybe just was that slight lack of depth up front, really. Evan Ferguson is going to be a great player, and I know Jack Collins is very excited for that and his Ireland ability. But that midfield that we came up against yesterday was just at times almost unplayable.
Yeah, Brighton have so many incredible players that have come through this year, like Caicedo, McAllister, like you said. They have so many good young players. Ferguson, only 18. Bonanote came on. He's only 18 years old. He looked pretty sharp. I think it was like only his second appearance or something like that. But I thought Polinia particularly had a really solid game, just breaking the play up, because we spent so much time without the ball. Was unlucky to get a yellow at the end. I actually think that was a fair challenge. But yeah, I think it was interesting the way that Silva set up with BDR up top. I think some of that thinking, I was surprised to not see him on the right because of the threat of Mitoma, Estupinian. I thought he might put Bobby on the right just to kind of nullify that. But I actually thought Harry Wilson did a pretty good job of tracking back. And Tete did so well against Mitoma, who's been one of the best wingers in the league, I would say, since the restart. But nothing new for Kenny Tete. We saw him shut down Mudryk, and he's just turning it into a hobby now, shutting down some of the best wingers in the league. So, but yeah, our midfield was incredible. Harrison Reed didn't really put a foot wrong. And it was definitely a tough match. Like I saw something about Bobby Reed only had 6 touches in the first half and none in the box. So it was just that kind of game where we spent a lot of time without the ball, which can always be difficult, but soaked up pressure and it paid off in the end. So that's all we had to do.
Just on Bobby Reed, I reckon this season we're not far off for his Fulham career completing every outfield position.
Yeah.
He's got centre-back and left-back. I mean, he might have filled in at left-back at some point as a sub maybe, but he's centre-back and left-back, I make it, and maybe holding midfield if you want to be pedantic, but he has covered every position outfield now.
Yeah.
Which is magnificent.
If Leno gets sent off and we don't have any subs left, he might
would be the one, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
I think he's a little bit too short to go in goal.
Surely it's like Diop.
Yeah.
Diop,
or Mitro. I reckon Mitro would thrive. I reckon he'd love it.
That would be fun.
I think Diop's but he'd throw himself around goal and he'd come crashing out. He'd play some sort of Manuel Neuer sweeper keeper, wouldn't he? Just like racing off his line. Actually, I don't want Fulham to get us. I don't want us to have the situation where we need to try it, but it would be funny. Maybe a pre-season friendly next year. That could be a laugh. Dan, I mean, obviously, football fans on Twitter are always notoriously salty. Fulham fans would probably be the same if we were in Brighton's shoes. But there was so much on Twitter. Oh, I couldn't bear to watch that every week. Oh, Fulham are anti-football. All of this. I just see it as necessary evil yesterday. Yes, I could see it every time that it was just, there was those moments where we almost just wanted a break. Even about 5 minutes in, I think Fulham were like, wow, Brighton are on top here. Someone just go down and hold their head. There was a lot of fake head injuries, but I don't know. A part of me wants to kind of understand where people are coming from, and I do get annoyed when Fulham are on top and Peterborough do it to us in the Championship. But it is the sport at the end of the day, and I am very proud of Fulham doing whatever it takes to win a game like that yesterday. Yes, it's the dark arts and all of that, but I don't know. Is it just saltiness, or is there some merit to what Brighton fans are saying?
Yeah, I can't. I can see the merit in it, but I disagree with it strongly because we see every game that Fulham play, and so we know that Fulham aren't an anti-football unit. There are teams that exist out there that very much are, but I think, and that's the difference here, is that we know that 9 games out of 10 we go out there and we play front foot, aggressive, attractive football. But there's always going to be those moments in games where you really do need to dig in, missing key players, you've got injuries, fine. I think it's acceptable. And I think Brighton would probably have done the same thing if they were missing a couple of key players. You've got to adapt to these situations. If you don't have a Mitoma on the left wing, or if you don't have, Pascal Gross sitting at the base there, you've got to adapt and you've got to do something different to get through a game. And just like that, we had to do the same without Mitro. And so I get it, because that's what Brighton fans have seen they haven't seen us play since we beat them at home. And they've just gone, well, this is an anti-football team because that's how they played against us. But as Fulham fans, we know that's not. And we know we've got a philosophy over the past, probably 5, longer than that, 7, 8 years probably, where we've turned into a club that almost demands attractive football. And I think it's one of the reasons why we saw the demise of Ranieri so quickly, and why Parker drew so much ill feeling, is because they weren't playing the football that sort of we'd come to expect from a Fulham side, whereas Marco Silva does. But every now and then you've got to go against that, and you've got to do something different just to pick up points in a game, and it worked.
I am going to watch some of Brighton's matches against the top sides later this season with keen interest. I can't wait to see them go away to Arsenal or go to City. I don't exactly know what their fixtures look like, but I'm sure they've got to face them between now and the end of the season. I'm going to be there watching with a magnifying glass at the telly, waiting for one of them to hold their head. And I'm tweeting at, Secret Seagull.
Super Seagulls, yeah.
Yeah.
Mitoma season.
Brilliant.
Just come on, you would do the exact same if you were under the cosh and you were at a difficult away ground and stuff like that. Let's not pretend that you wouldn't.
I just also think we weren't actually that bad. I think there was some moments where, we were probably a bit smart, but you're talking a head injury to Palhinha in the box, a clash of heads. There's not much that you can do there. He's gone down, he stayed down because it hurt, and the referee's got to stop play because it's a head injury. And then Jedi went down after what looked like a heavy challenge. I mean, we were at the other end of the pitch, but I turned to you when it happened because it just looked like it was a heavy challenge. But outside of that, I can't remember us wasting that much time in the game. I think it was more defensive football as opposed to consistent and blatant time wasting.
I don't know if it was apparent from the away end, but there were more than 10 occasions where the Brighton fans were absolutely up in arms about what we were doing or what the referee was doing. There was an instance, it was even on the matchday highlights, where Willian Pereira actually made a high tackle on one of their players. No foul.
Yes.
He just played on, and then it
was a poor challenge.
Corner from it.
It was a really bad challenge. It was on Solly March, wasn't it? And then we won a corner off the back of it, and we appealed for a penalty seconds later.
Yeah, for a handball. But I can completely understand why De Zerbi got sent off, because he was up in arms. I thought the referee didn't have a strong game at all. I thought the Palhinha yellow card was not a yellow card. The Willian yellow card was definitely not a yellow card as well. It actually epitomises Fulham, because we got the performance that we put in, 4 yellow cards all in the last 10 minutes of the game, just sort of epitomising the fact that we just want to get this done, just come away with a point and do anything we can to do that. and obviously we won the game. So the whole thing was it was one of the weirdest, funniest games I've ever been at ever.
I think the referee, though, got two of the big decisions right. They had a couple of penalty claims that I saw a lot of Brighton fans complaining about on Twitter, but the first one was Anthony Robinson on Veltman, I think, just kind of left his leg out, but there was nothing in it whatsoever. And then the second one was Tete poking the ball away from Matoma, and he clearly got a piece of the ball. So I don't think they have too much to complain about with the referee and how he refed.
Joel Veltman came out and said it wasn't a penalty. Joel Veltman himself in an interview said that he thought the referee made the right decision. He congratulated him on it. So stuff it up, yeah.
Yeah. Also, there was a couple of Brighton fans on my train being like, look, we scored 2 offside goals. You were very lucky. I was like...
But it was offside.
Hey, what? It wasn't even one of those offsides where like it was a millimetre. They had to get out the rulers and all of that. The linesman flagged all of them in the stadium. There was absolutely none of those goals, even from the other end, was I actually worried that I was like, that has to be offside because I mean, a couple of them were a bit closer than I actually thought they were, but in the stadium at the time, I was like, you can't be like telling me on the train that you deserve to win because you scored a couple of offside goals. Like, what?
That's ridiculous. You also know it.
Yeah, we should have won. We could have got. There was a couple of penalties we didn't get. Like,
you know, it's not that close, not that like close to being onside when one of them didn't even make the match of the day highlights. Like one of the offside goals just wasn't even worthy of getting on the highlights because it was just so far off.
Didn't draw any lines, so it doesn't count as close.
Yeah. Let's just talk about the late impact subs, Bryce. Vinicius and Solomon were the two ones that obviously linked up for the goal. Amazing how it comes about, the goal, because actually for a second we're in a real spot of bother because Kenny Tete drops an absolute bollock with a horrendous pass that Brighton conspire to mess up. And then Ream suddenly turns it into a massive attacking opportunity. It's kind of weird how it just caught Brighton out. And I feel like, look, Solomon's finish is fantastic. We all love Manor Solomon, but we need to give Vinicius some credit. He somehow just managed to get that ball through to Solomon, and it's a brilliant assist. Yes, of course, Manor Solomon has so much more work to do, but actually, I feel like we'd need to give Vinicius a rare bit of praise because that was what made the goal.
Yeah, I think an amazing showing of strength. He bossed Veltman off the ball and played a great through ball to Solomon, who had to get his first touch exactly right. Like, because Dunk was closing him down, he had to get the first touch right, took it straight into the box, and then the left-footed finish is just insane. But I think Silva definitely got it right with the substitutions. I thought Solomon, I was expecting to see him maybe a little bit earlier, just because everyone looked a little leggy. He came on in, I think, the 81st minute, and obviously made a huge impact. Massive credit to Ream, instead of just booting the ball, finding Vinicius. And yeah, Vinicius, despite not starting, deserves huge credit. 2 moments this season against Chelsea and then yesterday where he's basically got us 6 points in a way. And, he hasn't been the best as a backup for Mitro, and I don't think he's the long-term answer to someone that's backing up Mitrovic, but he's definitely chipped in and played a part. So he deserves a shout out, definitely. But once that ball hit the back of the net, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. What a moment.
I mean, Dan, Carlos Vinicius is becoming Fulham's Divock Origi, just popping up at big moments, despite not actually being that amazing. I feel like he's going to be our big moment player. He's going to win us a cup final.
He's got huge cult hero energy. I think there's something in this where, because there was a lot at the start of the season as well, a few games in when everyone had written him off, me included. I think we were a little bit like, I think he started off relatively promising, and then we saw him lead the line, and we were like, you might not be the guy for this job. But there's something to be said about players who just almost like that sense of occasion, like sort of just rise to it. And yeah, he did make a difference in general though when he came on. Without maybe, like, there was a couple of moments when he actually gave us something to go for in the box. There was a couple of times when Anthony Robinson got down the left, and yes, he fluffed them in the end, Vinicius, but there was just like the movement, the positioning, the strength are as close as we can get to replicating Mitrovic up top. And I think because Mitro is such a key cog in this system, your best bet is to try and replicate it as best you can, because everything is engineered to play through him and around him. So big credit to Carlos. I love it. And he may never score another Fulham goal and he may never get another assist, but we will not forget him for a long, long time, because he's produced two huge moments in this season in what could be an amazing season. And just also on what Bryce said, which I think is so valid. If people go and watch back the goal, it's incredible that Manor Solomon only takes one touch before shooting. He takes his first touch like 35 yards out, and it carries him all the way into the box. Like, it is the perfect first touch.
Well, I mean, I had seen limited highlights of Manor Solomon, but there is the goal that he scored in the Champions League against Real Madrid, and there is a lot of similarities to that goal that he scored. It feels like one out of the playbook that Solomon's able to play. I mean, obviously I think Carlos Vinicius might be a cult hero, but there's something about Manor Solomon which just feels like potential hero. And I just like that the chant for him yesterday was just extra loud. I think everyone knows that, like, we need to keep this guy and he's only on loan. Like, we need to convince him that we need to make him fall in love with Fulham. Because if he makes a decision in the summer, he's got one to make. And the downside of him scoring good goals for us is that other teams might notice and realise the situation. So there's a big challenge for Fulham to secure his services in the summer, because surely we're going to want to. Now we're going to be staying in the Premier League. I think we can all agree now. I don't think I'm cursing it anymore on 38 points.
We need 2 more points. I think we'll be okay.
Pass it 40.
Sammy, I was just going to say quickly, the ironic thing about that is we were worried about Manor Solomon not staying at Fulham because he might go to a club in Europe who are just a better caliber team than us because of his talents. And yet we might just get Europe and just keep him. And I think he will stay. I think he will definitely stay.
Sammy
I'm fairly
James,
confident.
You have to say what you said to us on the train from Lewis to Falmer about if Fulham win today. What did you say?
I said, I'm happy to repeat it. I said, if Fulham win today, then you have to start taking that. We have to be considered in the top 4 race.
Yeah.
I don't think that I said it thinking we're not going to win today. And look, obviously that Spurs win against West Ham means that it's now a few more points back. But if people are talking about Liverpool being in the top 4 race, and look how much further behind they are than us. I mean, some people, I reckon if you look at the odds, then Chelsea's odds are probably still higher than us.
Let's have a look.
I don't think it's going to happen, but with the way we're playing and the fact that Newcastle, I feel like are looking a little bit weary at the moment. It's a small squad and it's built up on them. Spurs have got massive injuries. We know the other teams are in a lot of bother. I still think Brighton have actually got a little bit on us. They've got 2 games in hand. They're only 3 points behind. I'm not saying we're going to finish in the top 4, but if you're writing an article tomorrow about the contenders for the top 4 and you don't include Fulham, then I actually think that you've got it wrong.
I've just got the odds up here. Liverpool are at 2.5 to 1. Meaning you put £1 and you get £2.50 back. Brighton are at 12 to 1. Chelsea at 26 to 1. Any guesses as to what Fulham are at?
75 to 1.
80 to 1. Whack a 10 on it.
God, that is whack a tenner on it territory, isn't it?
80 to 1. And we played first on
high.
Friday, and we could close that gap again. It's insane.
I mean, as I said, I don't think we will. I don't think we should. I just think that we're in the top 4 race. There was a few people I spoke to about it after the game yesterday, and everyone thought I'd grown 2 heads. I think it's going to take a long time for people to consider that actually might be a possibility. I just think the way that it's going, the way that Fulham are playing, and the fixtures, the way they fall as well, if we can just keep getting some points in the next month while we've got really tough fixtures. I think then if there was a sniff and we're going into April and we've got very kind fixtures in April and May for most of it, don't rule us out. I think there's one spot off for grabs. Clearly the top 3 are the top 3 and that's not changing. But I think there is a 4th place up for grabs, and I think Fulham are in the race. So we shall see. Right, we're going to take a break. We've got tons of questions to get through. Part 2 of the Fulhamish podcast. It is Sammy here, joined by Jack Kelly, Dan Cook, and Bryce Koval. Thank you to everyone, as ever, supporting Fulhamish in the Fulhamish community. Loads of you joining up, which is extremely exciting for us. It's a way of supporting the content that we do, the podcasts, the videos, the articles. It's a way of financially contributing, making sure everything ticks over and we can pay all of our costs for making all of the content that we do. There is a link in the description of this podcast. You can also find all the details on the Fulhamish website if you go to the support Fulhamish section. As a bonus, you get access to our 3 Telegram chats, which, as you can imagine, have been absolutely popping off today. I'm getting a buzz every about 2 seconds. So yeah, as a bonus, you get access to our wonderful Telegram community, which is full of lovely people. And yeah, it's a great way of supporting the pod if you can. But as I always say, we keep everything free. So if you can't or don't want to support us, that is absolutely fine. You crack on. Right, let's do some questions. As I mentioned earlier, I have never seen the questions. I might have to save some for the Thursday club. I've got 50 questions. I don't know what I'm going to do here. So we're going to have to rattle through some of these. Dan, I'm going to go to you on this first one. At Opinions FC, Marco Silva is Magic says, best limbs since ...
Oh, you know what it reminded me of, and it's because I was having this conversation about, like, you know, slightly scrappy win. Peterborough away. Peterborough away last season were really good, late-ish 1-0 limbs. I did enjoy those. Oh, what else have we had?
Borough was amazing, but maybe because it wasn't a full away end, it felt slightly different.
Thing. I think it needs to be a full away end just to get those limbs really going. But I think I'd probably say off the top of my head, Peterborough away last season.
Leeds away this year was, I mean, obviously I wasn't there, but Leeds away was pretty good.
Yeah, and also the Forest one where Harrison Reed scored that third in about 5 minutes was pretty special. But there was something about yesterday which just, I think, eclipsed it all. Just the late winner and just the absurdity of winning that game. Yeah. I think just made it something. I mean, there's another question that we had, and I'm struggling to find it now, and I will find. Oh, here we go. Killian Murphy said Solomon's goal had definite shades of Diamanti Camera away at Man City in 2008 about it. Where does Saturday's goal rank with other memorable late breakaway FFC goals? I mean, Jack, it will never quite be Diamanti Camera against Man City. We were relegated at half time, and he made us stay in the Premier League. As good as yesterday's was, it's not Diamanti Camera vibes. But yeah, any other kind of like late winners like that? We talked about Norwood's one earlier.
Yeah, I think even with the limbs, the one that comes to mind for me is in similar in terms of context, as in late winner, and actually it's a late sealer. Brentford away, Kearney. 16-17, because he sort of takes it 1 touch, 2 touch, and finishes, and obviously then we win the game and sends everyone mental. But we don't get many late winners. We really don't. I mean, Mitrovic against Swansea, that was very, very good. That crashing header, especially after they had almost got a penalty down the other end. And but yeah, in terms of context, so the Diamanti Camera one is going to be very, very hard to beat.
That's all time.
But in terms of that
until
win,
Old Trafford away, last day of the season, just secure Champions League. That's going to be all time.
In terms of smash and grab sort of situation, Darren Bent's header against United in 13-14 was very similar. Obviously, that was only a draw, but to beat the team who are joint 6th with you to go 6th. It is really, really, really special. So that with Diamanti Camera, obviously that being the best one, that Solomon's goal will be up there, and come the end of the season, it could be a vital 3 points.
Yeah, it really is definitely one of those ones I think we'll remember for an awful long time. Let's come on to something a little bit worrying after yesterday's game. Richard Bamber, one of our good friends on this pod, often comes up with 3-word reviews, but he's come with a good question here. He said, why do you think we pick up so many yellow cards, often ridiculous ones like yesterday? Aren't we the worst in the league, but we are hardly a dirty side? There is some, I mean, the one that's actually genuinely got to think about, Dan, is João Palhinha is now on 9 yellow cards. So I mean, he is getting a 2-match ban at some point. I think he'd have to go about 8 games, I think, now without a yellow in order to avoid the 2-match suspension. I mean, he did do very well for quite a long time of not getting a yellow, so maybe he can do it again. But yeah, we do pick up an awful lot of yellow cards, but weirdly, very few reds. Only still 1 red card, which was the Nathaniel Chalobah one. But yeah, the amount of yellows we accumulate, I mean, it's absurd.
Yeah, I think there's 2 elements to it, which is, one, we are an aggressive sort of front foot pressing side, and I think that leads to these moments when it just it boils over a little bit. You get a slightly heavy challenge, someone just gets a bit carried away. I think there's also a sort of a streetwise element to us. I think Marco Silva has made us very smart, and we pick up quite a few yellow cards here and there by just being, taking the right decision in giving away a foul and just taking the yellow. And I think that's something that Marco's brought in, this game management, which I think the team have been fantastic at. But I guess there's one other thing as well, which I think at times we can be a bit petulant. At times we can overreact. We've got this whole thing where, and again, I think it comes from Marco Silva, but we do flood the referee a lot. We do, Mitrovic particularly is guilty very often of dissent and getting up in the referee's face. Mm-hmm. And so there's that element to it as well. But to have 5 more yellow cards than anyone else in the league is quite big. I guess it just adds up. When you've got combative players, you got, Kenny Tete, who loves a challenge. You got Joao Palhinha, who loves a challenge. It just adds up, I guess, over time. And it is a slight worry, but I guess the number of games that Palhinha is going to win us across a season outweighs missing him for 3 or 4 games through suspension is probably the way you weigh it up.
I think the thing with Palhinha, I think maybe at the start of the season, he just really didn't. I don't know if he maybe thought about the consequences of yellow cards. And I think he started to realise, and obviously since then, I think he only picks up yellow cards that he needs to, mostly. But I think it was,
and the past 2 have been harsh.
Yeah.
Because wasn't it the one at Chelsea?
Yesterday's wasn't.
And Chelsea's, I'm pretty sure that was a bit of a...
Never
the one he
yellow
got at Chelsea, I just didn't feel like a yellow either. So I think there's also like a reputation thing in there that maybe starts to build as well with him. I'm sure as a referee, you keep an eye out for players like that who are combative. But
there's also a point that you'd rather have that than have it swing the other way. We've had Premier League campaigns where we've been such a soft touch and we haven't really laid a glove on them. And it is dirty, it is dark arts, and I do love it. But it also stamps an authority. You can't mess with Fulham because they will hack you down. They are willing to sacrifice themselves and get a yellow card for the sake of a result. And the fact that we've seen Marco Silva suspended for a game, it all stems down from the manager to the players. So there is that message out there. And I don't really have, apart from the suspensions and 5 yellows and 10 yellows will get you suspensions, I don't really have anything to complain about it. I'd rather it be this way than the complete polar opposite.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, like Dan said, it just goes to show the intensity that we're playing with, I think is the biggest part. But yeah, I was just looking at the stats and we have 59 compared to Liverpool, who has the least with 24. So that is a pretty big disparity.
Yeah, Bryce, we've had this question from Adam HM who says, the Palhinha yellow cards and the looming suspension, we all knew he was going to miss a few games and it's frustrating that some of the yellows recently have been harsh. Is there any temptation to rotate on Friday so that he'll be available for the Brentford game? I mean, part of me thinks that that's a false economy to drop him for a game so that he doesn't pick up yellows, so that he doesn't miss games. I feel like it's just... Tell Palhinha not to get booked against Wolves if he can absolutely avoid it. He's just going to have to walk that tightrope for as many games as he can, see if he can get to the magic 32 game mark. I feel like you can't just drop him because he might get a yellow. And I appreciate that Adam has caveated his question with saying it's unlikely.
I think, especially because Marco Silva, you always hear him say, we take it 1 game at a time. I don't think he would ever look forward and think about resting someone as important as Palhinha, but it is good to know that we have a really competent backup in Sasha Lukic now. So when he does get suspended, which feels inevitable at this point, but when he does, then I'm excited to see Lukic start a match and see what he's all about. So, yeah.
Just
Yeah.
one thing on it, Sammy, that, and you get is careful because with football, like we're getting to a point where it's already really overanalyzed and there's a lot of things that get done. But I do think there has to be a discussion around retrospectively rescinding yellow cards at some point because these things start to accumulate over a season. And if Joao Paulinho is missing 2 games, consecutive games through 10 yellow cards, and 3 or 4 of them might have gone to review and not been a yellow card, that's huge in our season. You know, and the league hinges on these things. If we miss out on something, and obviously there's so many if buts in there, but if we miss out on something by a point and the games that Paulinho was out for, we lose, which we did the last time he was out, it just, there's something in that where I think there's got to be something maybe thought about done, because it's not right that we may lose him for 2 games when he should only be on 7 yellow cards at the moment.
I think there has to be some sort of like appeals system, a bit like tennis, where you maybe get a couple of challenges a year. Because
to the challenge.
Yeah, they just feel. I mean, yeah, obviously, I can see why they don't have it, because teams get dozens of yellow cards.
59.
A year. People would. Yeah, if we were challenging every single one of them, then the FA would be bloody busy. But I feel like there must be a couple of times where you're like, can we please just look at that one? He literally didn't touch him or something like that. It seems to be like there's this whole system for red cards. But as you say, we're going to lose Joao Paulinho for 3 games this season because of yellow cards. And if it is the case that actually some of those yellow cards, when we know that for a fact that some of those yellow cards, I believe Silva said in one of his press conferences that Joao Paulinho is the only person to have had a yellow card for celebrating with the crowd this season in the entire league. Like, that's a bit unfair, right? Is he the only person that's celebrated with the crowd in the league? I'm going to be fairly sure that he isn't.
Yeah, definitely not.
Dan, this question from PK at Fulham 1000. He says, supposedly we are still 20th for chances against in the league. Do we think this will eventually catch up with us on a mean reversion? Or is there some sort of other explanation, the Leno effect, for example? I've had a few mates that are stats inclined who are trying to, I don't know, quell my optimism, trying to burn out my happiness by saying that we're getting lucky or something like that we're bucking the trend, that we are conceding a lot of chances. I know Jack's been talking about it. There is an element of like, it feels like we're pushing our luck a tad, but also show me that game yesterday that Brighton's, the XG was 2.7 to Brighton, 0.2 to Fulham. Now, there's no doubting that Brighton were better yesterday, but I don't think that Brighton should have won that game 3-0. Is there an explanation? Because obviously the stats don't suggest that Fulham should be 6th.
No, they don't. And Bernd Leno is one part of that, because he is statistically the best goalkeeper in the Premier League this season. So if you look at post-shot XG, so the likelihood of a shot going in after it's been hit, based on where it's going to go in the goal, Bernd Leno has prevented the most this season, and that's incredible. But beyond that, I guess there's an element as well of, I think we give up a lot of shots. I don't know how many clear-cut opportunities we give away, and I think that comes from that Brighton game yesterday. You see that of like, there's opportunities that the opposition have, but we're very good at getting in the way. I think we get a lot of blocks in. Tim Ream and Issa Diop are quite sort of aggressive defenders in the box. So they get in the way of a lot of shots. We saw it yesterday. I think Evan Ferguson got charged down once by Diop, and Tim Ream blocked another, I think, from Mitoma. So, but then I think there is just an element of we have lapses in concentration. And we spoke about this a couple of pods ago, where I do think that we are defensively very good for like 88 minutes of a game. But there are some moments, and against the big teams, we saw it, against City, against United, against Arsenal, where we have that one lapse, and that's where it costs us. But against some teams, it just hasn't been costing us. And I think there is a potential there that, we are on the lucky side of things, where we're benefiting from opposition teams not being as clinical as maybe we are. Because I think in general, we are quite good in front of goal, and we do take our chances. We saw it yesterday. So I think there's a lot of factors at play, and I think it's not as simple. And I think this is the tricky thing with stats. I'm a big fan of stats in football, but there is an element where you've got to have both the eye test and the numbers test. And I think by watching Fulham, you would understand that, okay, maybe they're not quite as good as, we're not the sixth best team in the league, but also based on the stats, we're better than the numbers show. So I think there's a middle meeting point there where if you both watch us and look at the numbers, you get a team who's probably the 9th, 10th, 11th best team in the league.
Yeah, I was going to say that the eye test, I'm still thinking that Fulham are mostly value for where we are. Like, yeah, you can say we're 20th for chances conceded. Are you trying to tell me that Fulham are the 20th best team in the league? Because that just isn't the case. Like, we've all seen it with our own eyes. There is a couple of times where I'm like, this is obviously a good season. There are things that are happening this season that may never happen in future seasons. A lot of things have come together at the right time. I think we've played teams often at the right time as well this season. You know, it has just been one of those that we're always going to remember. This is one of those glorious years where a lot of things have clicked, but also like there is an element of like, I don't know if the stats are really painting a true picture of what's actually going on. Just a quick one, which is you listened to last week's Thursday Club. You might remember we discussed on the podcast about penalties being scored against us and how it seems like Fulham don't miss many. That Fulham don't save many. As ever, Cottage Analytic, Chris Frank, with the definitive answer on this. He said, on penalties not scored against us, the last 20 penalties we faced outside of shootouts have all been scored. The last miss was the Millwall one discussed, which we mentioned. To find a penalty saved, you need to go back 31 penalties to the 2-2 draw with Brighton in 2018, which was Bettinelli saving from Pascal Gross.
Wow.
My word.
That was
so yeah. Fulham are not particularly good at saving penalties.
Leno's got one in him.
There's got to be something in that.
Yeah,
but I think that's too far beyond like just bad luck or good penalty taking, because the numbers sit somewhere like, I think it's like 77 or 78% of penalties are scored, and so like based on those numbers, for one in 30. We've saved, like we haven't, like hasn't gone in against us. So that's 97% of the penalties we faced in the last 30 have gone in. Like that's a long way off the average.
Yeah, no, it feels like there's one due. As Bryce, you were saying, Leno's due one, isn't he?
He's due one. He'll get one.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those things. I don't want to test it out. I don't want us to concede penalties in order for it to happen. But yeah, it would be nice to see Leno save one. But again, I mean, I'm more than happy just not conceding penalties. That would be the ideal for Fulham. A few more questions before we finish. I'm sorry, there are so many. So we're going to rattle through these. Bryce Desi6262 says, when does Solomon get a start? This is interesting now, isn't it? Because my word, he is pushing... Well, mostly Willian. I mean, he must be like, oh, how's my luck that like the player ahead of me? But then, there's the position, there's Bobby's position on the right. Potentially Willian could go there and Solomon left. Like, tricky one because he is doing so much to earn a starting place at the moment.
I think he could start against Wolves, and I think he should, to be honest. I mean, Mitro sounds like he's going to be out for more than just this last game. So I think Solomon could push for a start. I mean, he's shown how good he is. 2 goals in this 80-some minutes to start his Premier League career. So it's pretty amazing. He just provides such a spark. He's so quick, so dangerous. Every time he gets the ball, it feels like something's going to happen. I think it'll be interesting to see if Silva goes with Vinicius up top or if he tries the Bobby Reed experiment. But I could see Solomon starting ahead of either Bobby De Cordova-Reid or Harry Wilson, whoever is kind of in that line. But I think very soon, if not against Wolves, then very soon, and he deserves it fully.
Yeah. Let's go on to this question. Jack, I'll ask this to you. FFC's Dom says, how much money are we all contributing to the Marco Silva new contract fund? I would like Marco Silva to sign a contract, please. I've seen some of our neighbours up the road touting him as a replacement for Potter. I'm like, oi, leave us alone. Don't even think about it. But yeah, I mean, I loved that quote in the week he did in the press conference where he said, Fulham is my home. Obviously, we know that Marco Silva, you can't necessarily believe every word he says. He has a history for it, but it just feels right now. Surely it's got to be around the corner. Surely.
You can say that about what happened with Watford and Everton, but I think he's learnt from those lessons, and he's looked at Fulham even before he came to the club and saw a long-term project, the potential of automatic promotion, and then what could be had with the investment that the Khans do put into the club. And he's thrived in almost 2 seasons. He's taken us from didn't really know where we were going on when Parker left to on the brink of a European tour, like in the Premier League, to going into the Europa League, Conference League, or even held the Champions League, 80-1 odds.
The champions.
Bum, bum, bum,
I'm going to have to brush up on my piano skills to get that one done. But honestly, in terms of the new contract, I have no insight. I have no idea. I've got absolutely no clue. But I would imagine they're discussing it. They have to be. And yeah, like he should. I'd like him to sign a 3, 4, 5 year deal. And like if Potter goes, and Silva's touted, because he might be like, he's in that bracket now where he's that manager that's impressed everyone, like Potter did at Brighton, and he could go to a big again. But I think he would have learned from his lessons, and he's gone, no, I've got a good thing here at Fulham. I'm happy. I've got a good squad. I know I've got a good relationship with Tony Khan. I don't necessarily think he'll walk. And I can't believe we're even discussing it, really. I think that sort of even like upsets me even thinking about it. But I'd like to think that Marco is going to be here for a while, and I will touch all that wood I can find.
Yeah, I think that honestly, the day will come. I think at the way it's going, I think it's big European clubs that we mostly would need to worry about more than maybe English clubs. I mean, obviously, if Arsenal offer him a job, I think he's going to consider it. But I just don't see there being a huge amount of jobs coming up that he would accept. However, I honestly think it's one of the big European ones in the coming years is going to happen. And then I think Marco Silva might be the kind of manager that they might look at. But let's cross that bridge.
Let's not even talk about it.
It's not today, and I think he's staying for a little while. That is it for the questions today. There are so many that I haven't done. I'm going to save some of them for the Thursday Club because there are so many good ones here. And I know we often do emails in the Thursday Club. But I'm going to save some of these questions for Thursday's show with Jack and Peter because they're brilliant. And it's a bit of a shame that we haven't got time to go through all of them. So thank you for getting involved in those. All we need to do for the rest of the podcast today is name it. So Mr. Dan Cook, what would you like to go for?
I think, based on the reaction earlier when we read these out, I was originally going to give it to Louis with Man or the Moment, but the group reaction to Yo-Yo to Euro of Richard Solbamba, I think, has to be the clincher. So well done, Sol.
Yeah, I love it. It sums up the fit situation. And, we maybe could have gone for like smash and grab is obviously the 3 words that everyone kind of was saying yesterday, and obviously like Manor puns and stuff. But I like that that really represents the feeling and just the whirlwind of change, in that less than a year Fulham have changed from a yo-yo club to something that is genuinely, it actually could happen now. Europe could happen. I mean, it is just sensational. Thank you very much to my guest today, Jack Kelly. Thanks,
Thanks, Sammy.
Dan Cook, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sammy.
And Bryce Koval, great debut. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sam. It was a pleasure.
All right. We will return on the Thursday Club previewing Friday's game against Wolves. Enjoy the week with a stride in your step, whether you're going to work or school or college. I imagine it's just going to be that little bit easier this week, and there's going to be a bit more of a smile on your face than usual because Fulham are the mustard. What a day. What an away day, whether you were there at the Amex or whether you were watching from home. I'm sure you all enjoyed it. A fantastic, fantastic weekend. Can Fulham keep up this momentum against Wolves on Friday? I certainly hope so. So have a lovely week. We'll speak to you later on in the week. But until then, come on, you Whites.
You Whites.